Members of Congress. Members of Congress, there you are. Yes, I know in the past sometimes you have been somewhat hard of hearing, so I'm glad the volume is up there. The end of my second term is nearing, and the election is upon us. And you will be coming to a decision as to who will serve as president for the next 4 years. I wanted to allay some of your concerns, or maybe your fears, that I would stand for a third term. I will not. So I'm here tonight to inform that of you so that you are free to consider any and other gentlemen that will be standing for office. I will be praying for your decisions, praying that the right person that is clothed with the trust that you give them will meet your expectations, that he is a man of wisdom, of perseverance, and of virtue. I also want to, as I was preparing for my thoughts tonight, I looked back at what I said to the Confederated Congress 13 years ago. And I know some of you here in the United States Congress were also at that time there. And I noticed there's certain themes that what I'm going to say tonight were the same themes that I talked to you 13 years ago. And 1783, it is 1796 now. And I wondered, why is that? Just the 13 years that go by. And so, are there certain themes that are recurrent in any government over time? And I think so. And so, possibly the comments that I will make tonight will be applicable in 50 years, or 100 years, or maybe 200 years from now, that these same principles will be applicable to those in Congress, to those in the three branches of government. I wonder. I will proceed. I also will pray for brotherly love, for unity amongst not only the Congress here, but also all of the states. And instead of 13, we've grown to 16 states. We've added Kentucky, we've added Tennessee, and we've added Vermont. Who knows when we might be a republic of 15 or 20 states? And taking a look at what's occurring, it probably won't be long. So I would say my comments tonight surely would be applicable to those states that will be joining us fairly shortly here. I'll not only pray for that, but that the Constitution that, again, many of you contributed to in 1787 and then in 1789 as you went to your individual states and got compliance with that, I will pray that this Constitution, which was a product of your hands, will be sacredly maintained. That all the efforts that we did, not only the Revolutionary War, but the first 8 years to get to this point will be sacredly maintained. And that the administration would be wise and virtuous. The administration of the Constitution as in the different departments at the federal level as well as the state levels there. We have noticed a lot of change, tremendous desire for changes. One of the changes that people are looking to is to change the Constitution. I'll address my thoughts a little bit more to that a little bit later, but we want to be very careful that we change that foundational document for our future. It has served us well this last year, 8 years. It should serve us more, but there will always be efforts to change the Constitution because certain groups of people, it doesn't serve their needs. But this Constitution isn't for them, it is for we the people. all the people equally. So we must make sure that the changes to the Constitution are not willy-nilly. Do realize also, some people feel that the culmination of our revolution was the defeat of the British. That wasn't the culmination of our revolution. The Constitution was the culmination. A new form of government never instituted in the history of mankind, our Constitution of the people. That was the revolution. There is value in national unity. We need to continue to keep the national unity, as not only do people want to change the Constitution, but they want to enfeeble the Constitution, weaken the administration of the Constitution. I said this to the Marquis de Lafayette. It appears to me little short of a miracle that the delegates from so many different states should unite in forming a system of national government. And that form is so little liable to be against well-founded objections. In other words, over the last 8 years, people, they couldn't come up with anything that was really significantly short within the Constitution. So, citizens by birth or citizens by choice, we should revere this document. We should value it. We should uplift it as the center of our, not only government, but our way of life. It should hold our affections and loyalties. So as Americans, we should exalt the name American over any other appellation, over any other name. I am a Virginian, but first I'm an American. I am a planter, but first I am American. That should justify patriotism from us like no other name. We are Americans. We have similar backgrounds. For those of us that had grandfathers, great-grandfathers that came and colonized, that background binds you together as an American. For those that helped carve this country out of the wilderness for 100, 120 years, that binds you together as Americans. If you fought through the war, that binds you as Americans. If you're here recently, you build on what is already here, and you are Americans. We must never lose that focus in our unity. To appreciate what we have done, if you would imagine with me, if the powers of Central Europe got together and said, you know, we like what America's done and they're doing well, let's adopt what America has done. So let's say Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland, Hungary, Austria, German states, and Prussia all of a sudden got together in Congress, kind of like us here, and they start talking about what would it take for us to do what the Americans have done. Well, number one, they've got to form a national government overseeing all the little states, or big states, and then the states have to say, there are no titles, there are no kings, there's no queens, there's no nobles, no aristocracy, no hereditary citizenship. We're just all the people. And you'll be giving, and oh, by the way, we won't have 6 different armies. We're going to have one army, and everybody's going to get together for the one. We don't need 6 anymore. And what do you think the chances of that happening today? It's not much. What about if could they do it in 4 years? Could they do it in 4 months? Our Constitution was formed in 4 months. That's the magnitude of many of what many of you did 8 years ago to come up with this Constitution. We've lasted for 8 years, and with God's graces, we will continue. So let us maintain with great energy keeping this nation together. However, there are dangers afoot. I'd like to list these dangers. You will recognize some are big, some are small. Number one danger, by the way, it's not the number one, it's the first one on my list. Do not be complacent with the operation of our government as it is today. Complacency is a danger. We're a large nation. We were 2.5 million, we're over 4 million now. We spread over the same 13, now 16 states. And so there's many administrative posts all through there. If we do not pay attention to what's occurring out there, we're just complacent, things will creep up on us. And all of a sudden, some of what we put together at the administrative level will be eroded, and we'll start doing things for other people that we shouldn't. Beware of pretended patriotism. There are those that say, oh, well, we should do this, whatever department or sector of the government. It is something that will be really good for everybody. I'm a patriot, and this will really help everybody. And although they may be very persuasive and be charismatic, and we may be carried away by that, it still may be bad government. Do not be swept away with pretended patriotism and enthusiasm. I think you'll find that whoever's proposing the wonderful change has some interest in the change. Third thing, rival groups. Rival groups are groups that are bound together by similar interests. And they look for favors or privileges from local governments. And they whisper in their ears and just say, well, you know, wouldn't it be good if we did it this way? And oh, by the way, this other group that is also involved in carpentry or masonry or everything like that, did you know this? No. So these small rival groups are just looking for small favors, but they misrepresent the goals, the aims, the ambitions of another group in order for them to get favor. What should be our response to this at the administrative level? We must maintain our union, maintain our standards, not loosen them, lower them, so that these groups might come in and get an advantage. Because the whole, if it is strong and central, all the parts will benefit equally. So we don't want to just favor this group, favor that group. They all benefit equally if we are fair, if we are just in our administrative dealings. Let's talk about the Constitution again. Why? It's central. It remains strong. It is our founding document. It is the offspring of the Constitutional Convention, again, that many of you participated in 1787, those 4 long, hot months in Philadelphia. And then you had to go to your states and convince them to what we did was to everybody's benefit. Okay, Pennsylvania, you're not getting everything you want. But you know, Georgia, you're not getting everything you want either. So we balanced this over 4 months. Everybody got something. Not everybody got everything. You have to go to those states and convince the states that you represent that this Constitution is the best that could have gotten and that it secures our future as we move forward. Do remember, those of you that were at the Constitutional Convention, that we explored all the governments of history. We looked into them, the successes, the failures, as we were seeking exactly what form of government that we wanted to put together. And we found that there was no form of government that was exactly what we wanted. Something that was truly of we the people. That common person votes and votes for the person that they think has the best credentials, the best values to carry out their intentions, their best representatives to form the government. So we looked with mature deliberation and didn't adopt any one form of government. We even looked at the Netherlands and Switzerland to see their republics, how they matched up against ours. Well, let's see. Number one, they're very small states or countries. Their populations is small. They are centuries old. They have societal pressures upon them that we do not have. It was not a good fit. We are large, we're populous, we're growing, our future is fraught with opportunities. Switzerland, Netherlands, not so the growth potential, but we had that, and of course we have all this land that we can expand into. So it wasn't a good fit. Again, we looked at the strengths and weaknesses and failures. So we were uninfluenced and unawed by these historic countries. We the people was our focus. So what we learned was not so much the form of government, but the principles of government. We came up with the principles that we valued, and we breathed it into a form of government based on these principles. So, what are these principles? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those principles are already emblazoned into our past, into the fiber of our Constitution. It is who we are as Americans. Never lose sight of this. What do we mean by truths? What we mean is there are truths. Really? Yes. And they're unalienable. Self-evident. That is, this truth doesn't need to be proven. It's true. We look about nature, and we don't have to prove the principles that drive nature. They're there. They're consistent. Every place, over every age, through all time, these truths are self-evident. Within social contexts, families and everything, there are also self-evident truths. And within governments, self-evident truths. The truths that we were talking about, all men are created equal. At birth, all men are created equal. Equal within the society that they are born into. Any society, any place, through all time, born equal, with the same gifts, no matter where they're born. It's self-evident. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Rights, yes. Rights to what? To life? Yes. That is part of the package of mankind. We're born, self-evident truths. They're unalienable rights. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Life again, birth, liberty. Liberty, the ability to take this life with the package that we were born with and go as far as we can to develop those characteristics, those skills, those interests, those passions we have. We have the freedom, we have the liberty to develop those within the context of the society. We do realize that different societies have different boundaries. Man is born that he can go beyond those boundaries. That's part of who they are. But typically we do conform to whatever society that we're brought into. pursuit of happiness, to be able to become what we're actually created to be and not be confined to other expectations, a flowering of personality, a maturing, that we experience joy with life every day. Other principles? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. We, the people, that is a principle. The people, not the king, not the queen, not the nobles, not the knights, not the lords and ladies. We, the common person, we establish a more perfect union. Not perfect. It won't be perfect. Perfect means that people that create governments are perfect, and we all know we're not. A more perfect union that is based on the principle of we the people. That's what we formed, more perfect. Establish justice. Be fair in all our dealings. Be fair in our laws. Equal laws, no matter who you are, where you're born, you are treated the same through the justice system. We establish this. We ensure domestic tranquility. We want to have a society that you're not frightened, you're not insecure, you just wonder about tomorrow. We want a society that is tranquil. We want a society that has laws that are kept so that those that violate those laws will not violate your principles. That's part of domestic tranquility. Provide for the common sense. Defense is part of that too, that we have what military is necessary to assure us that foreign aggressors will not overcome us. Sometimes the military needs to be larger, sometimes less than that, depending on what's going on out there. Promote the general welfare. And that is just a big area. What will that be for us now? And what will it be for 20, 30 years from now? What is the general welfare? Whatever you decide in Congress, then that would be supported through the government. There are things people should do for themselves, but there's also things that government should do. But you're the Congress. You're making those decisions. I'm retiring, as you know. And then to secure the blessings of liberty. The freedom to become that which you were created to become. Do ordain this Constitution. Well, are there additional principles? Yes. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or limiting the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Do not fear, I'm not going to read all 10 of the Bill of Rights, just the first one. But I do suggest that when you have time to read them, they're part of who we are. No law respecting establishment of religion. Of course, we know that in the state of Virginia, that the Anglican Church, Church of England, was the official religion for Virginia. And everybody paid a tax to support the clergy of Virginia. Even if you were a Methodist or a Baptist or a Catholic, you had to pay the tax. That's done away with. That doesn't exist anymore. We have certain freedoms. It goes on, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof of the religion. We're free to worship and believe and practice our beliefs within the United States. That is a principle. Also, not limiting the freedom of speech or of the press. It is so important for we the people, when we have a grievance, to be able to air it, to be heard. That's why we have representatives, that's why we have certain departments within the governments, excuse me, that you can go to and seek explanation why certain things are done, and get an explanation, and as many times as not are pleased with that. But when we go to administrative officials or to representatives, it is always good to go with civility. You are better heard, especially if you're prone to shout. A lower voice is received much better. I have been the recipient of some amount of shouting. And of the press. The second term as president, the press did not treat me kindly. For one reason or another, I did not rush to defend myself. I didn't rush to explain so that people would feel more highly of me than the article said. That's not my place. The freedom of press, if they say certain things, they're free to say that. The people, we the people, have to decide whether they believe it or not. And if they don't believe it, then they won't take it any further. If they do believe something that's scurrilous, something that is scandalous, it may be they will even ask for some more information. The right to assemble, to petition, as you know, those were two things that were denied us for many years. The king would not allow us to assemble or petition. And of the Bill of Rights, the majority of them are a reaction to the tyrannous approach of the king and parliament against us when we were still colonies. Here's a principle that drives all the others. I think it was Dr. Franklin said that all forms of government are good, but this one problem infects them all and creates problems. That's a principle of corruption. Man is drawn to corruption. It is part of man's heart. What do I mean by corruption? Corruption is the desire to promote themselves over everybody else around them and to take away their rights and keep them yourself. It is not a Republican virtue. Virtue is when you seek to elevate those around you. Corruption is when you want everybody else to serve you. It's at the heart of man. Power, success, position, money. And here's the word that goes along with corruption. It's more. Whatever you have, a corrupt person wants more. And when they get that, what do they want? More. And then what? More. Excuse me. Power, money, possessions, position, status, accolades, worship. Worship from the people. Corruption is the killer of all governments. That was one of the principles that we faced when we began to come up with our own form of government. In our Constitution, we said there'll be the national, the federal government, and then state governments. We've just couldn't put a national government together. So what things will come from the states up to the national government? Now, these are the things that we want the national government to do. In order for them to do that, they have to have power to do these things. Let's separate these into three different branches. The strongest and most numerous branch will be the legislative. These are the representatives that the people, we the people, have entrusted with their future by giving them to the delegate, the representative, to come to Congress like this and represent them. So, you, the Congress, you know what powers you have. Stay within those powers. The other two branches, one's the executive. The executive is inferior to the Congress. The executive is merely carries out the wishes of the Congress. That's what the executive does. Then we have the judicial, which is the weakest of the three and isn't really expected to have much to do. So, legislature passes laws. The Supreme Court, the judicial system, checks to make sure they're constitutional. Okay? And the executive carries them out. Well, there becomes, and so their powers were defined, they're limited and distributed. But the next thing we have, because we know that man is prone to corruption, that we're going to separate not only the three different branches, but they check each other. Each one has certain powers that whatever one branch does, the second branch checks it to make sure it's bona fide, that it helps we the people, that it's constitutional, and that the second branch is checked by the third branch checked with the so it is this checks and balances that sounds like an accounting term, but it is a power term. It is integral to our Constitution. Separate the powers and let the powers make sure that the others are doing what they should do. So the Constitution separates those powers, and when men and women have urges to overstep those, they are checked. And so that's why we broke that down this way. There are a couple of quotes I want to share with you. James Madison, Mr. Madison, he said, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary." Well, I don't see any angels here tonight. Some of you, of course, are pretty close. We need government. And he went on to say, "In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed with laws and everything. And in the next place, you must oblige it, the government itself, to control itself." So we're back to virtue. Those in power have to control themselves. That's why we have three branches and limited powers. Here's something that Abigail said. Mrs. Adams, John Adams' wife, that is quite insightful. She wrote a letter to John, I didn't go through her letters. This is common knowledge. I apologize. "And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors were." I see a movement here going on, and you as Congress, remember that. Be more generous to the ladies than your ancestors. In another letter, she said, "John, do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands." We're back to power. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could be. Insightful. As far as I know, Mrs. Washington is pleased with our marriage. And she also said, "If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion." and we will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. Astute woman, holding us accountable to what we said we rebelled against England for. No voice and no representation. Once again, to speak for all the ladies out there. Of course, we've come a long way, and those aren't issues at this point. Let's talk again about the Constitution, amendments to the Constitution. I expect that with a burgeoning population, people coming from other parts of Europe and other parts of the world with different ideas about how we should move forward, they're going to be wanting to make some changes to the base, the Constitution. We've gone over our principles. We have more principles than that. We want to stay to that. But amendments to the Constitution need to be substantial. They are not just temporary for a short period of time. They are long-term for the life of the Constitution. We must pay particular care and research to make any changes to the Constitution. But there are times that there is pain and suffering the populace experiences, yes, but that doesn't take a constitutional amendment. What that takes is the government meeting some short-term needs. And a lot of times the pain and suffering is just short-term. When we talk Constitution, we're talking long-term. And oh, by the way, to make it very, very difficult, as you know, to make a local change, 50% plus one, and a change could be made. To change the Constitution of the United States, the amendments, 75%. How long would it take? 75%. There's only been one additional amendment since the 10 Bill of Rights amendments there. So, John Adams said, "We are a nation of laws, not of men." Now, why would he say that? Well, if you remember King George, he wanted to just make changes to the English Constitution based on what was good for him at the time. They're called arbitrary changes, arbitrary lines. It's the whim of those in power. And if you are underneath the divine right of kings, then whatever the king decides is the divine right of God. So the Constitution is under the rule of law, and we must obey the Constitution and the laws until they are changed by Congress, which is the will of the people. And then once they're changed, we obey them. And they're enforced until they're changed. Just because there are some differences of opinion doesn't mean some people cannot or are exempt for obeying those laws. They need to obey. Let's get back to dangers. What other dangers are there out there? There are other groups there. It's not the rival groups that are just looking for small favors or privileges. These are larger groups that are better organized, have more power, and want to have more significant influence in the government. They don't want just favors. They want to some changes, some interference, some control, maybe even to counteract some laws that were passed that affects them. They have more power. They're able to speak into government officials with more zest and appeal. These larger groups must be vehemently withstood because they are destructive to the government, to our way of life. As we grow and we proliferate, there will be more and more of those. We need to know that they're there, and we need to know why we have the laws in place that we do, especially at administrative level. If they go unchecked, if their influence increases, they'll grow larger, and their interests aren't the interests of you. They care less about you. Their interests that they seek to have is to promote themselves. I think, what word we used? Corruption? Did we use the word more? This is where they're headed. This is where they're going. And then, when one group sees the first group getting more influence and things going more their way, the second group says, well, how come they're doing better than us? Well, because this is what they're doing. They say, we can do this. And so they start doing the things that the first group does, and then they get favors and they get government contracts, whatever it is. And the first group said, what? We've lost influence. They redouble their efforts so that they can get back on top. And it is a back and forth competition over the years. And the abuses that come from this competition, unchecked competition, they're horrid. We must stand against them. We must stop them. Another danger, spirit of innovation. Sounds good, innovation, yes. As we grow, there are new ways of doing things. We want to adopt those things that have been proven. But there are many people that, and again, we've got hundreds and thousands of departments and administrators, and within that group, some people might say, well, I think it would work better this way. It's an opinion. Others that say, well, I've looked at this and I think that the way out of the situation is best handled in this way. It's a hypothesis. Do you have any proof? No. The workings of government should be based on proven outcome, where we can look to other nations, other states, other departments, and see that a certain opinion actually has a proven fact behind it. Then we can make those adjustments. But as far as innovation, everybody's got an idea. People have more than one idea. If the government starts to change things based on innovations, we will be spending more time changing government because of the next great idea than actually operating. So it seems small, but it's so time-consuming. We need time to be mature and grow as a nation and stand against limitless innovation. Then there's the spirit of party. And when we talk about spirit of party, excuse me, we're not talking political party. We're talking about people getting together. It's natural. We get together for all sorts of things. Families get togethers, or we get together in faith communities, or we get together because we work together, or we're from the same location, and so we congregate. The spirit of government is when, as an extension of this, we might have similar jobs or in similar industries, and we notice certain things that the government has done that we think shouldn't have been done, or maybe could have been done better. Well, then we can go ahead and go and talk to our representatives or the different parties there. But a lot of times these small spirits of party grow and become more insistent and maybe become somewhat hostile toward government, because government is not really responding to what they think should be done. Now, if we were in a tyranny, that wouldn't be a problem, because all a tyranny does is crush them. Think about England during the Revolutionary War. Crush us. Problem solved. Unfortunately, we weren't an easy solution. In a popular government, Republican governments, we want to hear. And so we do have those processes that we encourage citizens to become involved and give us their opinions. But a problem occurs when these small groups get larger and then even larger, and then they start to compete with each other. They really want to dominate within the corporate life of America. They want more influence, more power. They want alternative dominations. They want to control. And there are horrid abuses from it. We would call these factions. They're more concerned about their faction than any other faction, any other people. And it comes to the point where they'll do anything and everything for them to have more influence than another group. This is a form of tyranny. It's a form of tyranny. Part of the freedom that we have here to express and organize and petition, but it can get out of hand when you're no longer concerned about the will of the people, what's best for the nation, but just wherever you're at. And you want to dominate wherever you're at. We need to stand up against that. I said this: a good general government without good morals and good habits will not make us a happy people, and we shall deceive ourselves if we think it does. These groups, these factions, if left unchecked, will even grow more powerful. They will want, what's that word? More and more and more. And if we look at history, we see that the government that they are within loses power. There becomes less unity. There becomes conflict, chaos, confusion. And the common person wants it to stop. No more. No more. History shows us that certain strong rulers, like let's say Napoleon, let's say Caesar, promises the population that they will bring things back to where it's calm. And they seize power. And they too become a tyrant. I said this: a fire not to be quenched, the spirit of party that grows into a faction, it demands a uniform vigilance to prevent it bursting into a flame, lest instead of warming, it should consume. Be aware of factions that grow so large that the government doesn't stand in their way. There is another danger, believe it or not, great emergencies. When great emergencies occur, then the government feels as though it needs to run and solve those emergencies, such as warfare. We take that as an exception. We build up to that. We press people into the military. We force people into production of armaments. We send them out. It's something that has to be done during warfare. It is something in order for us to survive as a nation that causes great dislocation, but it's only temporary, only as long as the war lasts, and then afterwards the military is disbanded into more local groups. Or it could be dislocations in the economy. There could be climatic changes that cause a drought. And farmers, and of course, we're still 90% farmers, 90% of the crops that need water are not flowering. Tremendous dislocation of our economy. How are farmers going to be able to feed their animals, feed their children? Then they have to slaughter their animals, and then there's a shortage of beef and what have you. So there are times that it's warranted for the government to step in when there's economic challenges. Another thing with climatic changes, not only drought, there can be floods, there can be tornadoes, And the government is justified to go and help repair those portions of the nation because no part of the nation has enough funds or abilities to quickly bring life back to normal. So it's a danger if any of those things become long-term. They're all supposed to be short-term, but when any of them become long-term, there's a danger. The last danger I would propose to you is encroachment. Encroachment of who? One of our principles. Which principle? The checks and balances system of the three branches. And what may occur is one branch that wants things a certain way cannot get them because they are checked by one of the other branches. And so the one branch may really, really want things to go their way, so they begin to try to influence another branch one way or another. So if they can bring two branches together, their goals, what they would like to see, is a lot closer. Now, you may say, this could never happen. Oh, and I would purport it could very well happen. Let's talk about King George. So there's king, the monarch. He has certain powers, responsibilities. There's the legislature, the House of Lords, House of Commons, and then there's the judicial. Now, if King George decided that there are certain programs that he liked, that he could give out titles, he could give out money to influence others. That is a danger. How do we check these dangers? I would say it's substantially true that virtue or morality is the necessary spring of popular government. We're back to corruption, we're back to virtue. And I go back and say the lust of power prompted by a people that won't stand up against the power. They just want the benefits of being a citizen, but they don't want any work. That is a step in corruption. When it comes to foreign nations, no long-term, short-term alliances. We don't want to be cobbled together with nations that are always at fight with each other. Thank you for your kind attention. I will be down in the lobby afterwards and will answer any questions that you might have at that point. Thank you, Congress, for what you've done. Look forward to the next 4 years, whoever you choose to lead the nation within. Thank you.